Hey, this is the channel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC 181. Overall, pretty good card. Got a new champion in Robbie Lawler. Anthony Pettis is adding to his legacy. Got some good finishes actually in the first 4 fights of the main card. Got a knockout of the year from Josh Saman. Some fights were just like alright, but for the most part I thought it was a good, if not a great card actually. Some divisional relevance here and there, so that's good. My picks are actually really good. I mean, not perfect, but really good. 8 out of 11. I got all the main card fights right. And I went with a feeling that Robbie Lawler would win. And I had to brag, but yeah, I felt like I was one of the few guys that picked Robbie Lawler to win this one. And he did, controversially for sure. This also keeps up my streak of picking Johnny Hendricks fights right ever since he fought like Rick Story. I have always picked his fights correctly. His losses to Story, GSP, and Lawler, and all of his wins, I picked them all correctly. Somehow, I don't understand it actually. Gotta brag there. I'm sorry, I had to brag there. But otherwise, bonuses. Fight of the night went to Matt Hobar versus Sergio Pettis, and performance of the night went to Anthony Pettis and Josh Saman. Some things to note were the refereeing. The most egregious thing was from Mario Yamasaki missing the eye poke in the Faber versus Rivera fight. Controversial scorecards, especially for the main event. I do not agree with 40. Even though I picked Lawler to win, man, I don't agree with 49-46. They dimmed the lights for the main event, so that was something new and cool they did. Big news, though. I gotta talk about it even before I get to the fight card. CM Punk, Phil Brooks, has signed a multi-fight deal with the UFC. I believe he hasn't picked a weight class yet. He hasn't picked a camp yet. He does train under Hendricks. Looks like it's going to be welterweight or middleweight. The things we do know is that Dana White's going to probably give him like a fighter that's 0-0 record, 1-0 record, maybe a 2-1 record, but someone more within his experience or lack of that matches his lack of experience. I'm a pro wrestling fan, so I'm actually very familiar with CM Punk. I was watching him back when he was wrestling for ROH, so I'm very familiar with CM Punk. I am a fan of his. One thing that I can get from interviews is that no one's expecting him to be like a title contender or anything like that. I think he just kind of wants to fight. He can't. His age doesn't, and he's 36. Doesn't indicate that he's going to be much of a prospect. The fact that he does do jiu-jitsu and he does have a Kempo background. It's not like a strong high-level background, like, say, Brock Lesnar, NCAA Division I champion, or whatever, I think he's champion. Not 100% sure. Maybe not. He doesn't have any of that type of, he doesn't have, the high-level background. He's not, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt either. So, it's not like he's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu either. So, he's not, he's not, a super high-level guy in the martial arts that he does practice. In pro wrestling, he did reach the height of pro wrestling, winning a WWE World Heavyweight title. Or is it just WWE title? Beat John Cena for it, if I remember. Could be wrong. That, in my opinion, is going to be a bit of a negative factor as far as his fighting goes. I've heard he got he's gotten in a couple concussions from pro wrestling. And being on the road 300 and some odd days a year, doing pro wrestling, taking bumps and whatnot, I mean, that's just wear and tear on your body. So he's going to, I think that's not going to help him very much transferring into the UFC. Obviously, what they're trying to do is get the curiosity buys with CM Punk fighting. That's the thing. You can get that pro wrestling audience. He has like 2 million Twitter followers. And he does have a big legion of pro wrestling fans behind him. At the very least, he should get some curiosity buys. Yeah, that's the thing with Punk. Fan reaction has been more or less split from what I can tell. Some of them embrace it. It's like, hey, it's MMA. It's entertainment. The whole, like, freak show spectacle thing is a part, or, isn't uncommon in MMA. You did get James Toney. The UFC has signed James Toney. They have signed Kimbo Slice. So there's those fans that are for this signing. They're like, okay, hey, you know what? We've seen it before. We've seen spectacle over legitimacy before. Because honestly, the fact of the matter is, legitimacy-wise, the guy's a 0-0 fighter. He should be fighting in the regional scene. If he wasn't CM Punk and just Phil Brooks, he would just be some guy, like some 36-year-old guy doing MMA. But he is CM Punk. That's the thing, So, the fan reaction, the naysayers are just saying, hey, look, legitimacy. The UFC is the number one MMA organization out there. How dare they, I want to see the best fighting the best. This guy, doesn't even have a high-level martial arts background in anything. He wasn't like a boxing champion. He's not even a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He doesn't have a wrestling background. He's old, He's on the wrong side of 30. So there are definitely those guys. I remember listening to like Beat Down After the Bell, and one guy's like, come on, this is the dumbest thing ever. I mean, you cannot think that this is right, and he's just like, he was just like, I'm not ordering this. I want people not to order this. So obviously, there's a signing like this is gonna split MMA fans. Some are gonna like it. Some will be relatively indifferent to it. Well, actually, not many. I don't think many. I think it really is gonna be someone either like it or some will hate it. But otherwise, for me, I'm fine with it, I get it. He'll probably be on a pay-per-view. Might be a co-main event. Probably, he won't be the main event, He'll probably be like a co-main event. Or at least the third fight down from the card, He's got to be on the countdown shows, He can't have CM Punk not on the countdown show, Probably be somewhere along there. I'm very curious who he's gonna fight though, because honestly, like, even like some 0-0 fighter, if he has like enough amateur fights or something, I honestly wouldn't favor CM Punk against a lot of guys. A lot of people are saying, oh, he's really athletic, he's really not. I've seen the guy wrestle. I don't really know if the word... I've never actually used the word athletic coming to CM Punk. I'm not going to lie. I think he's a decent athlete, but I never actually found him to be like a great athlete, to be perfectly honest with you. He's not like a fast twitch guy or anything like that. And he's not a guy that I think like has like that fast twitch like movement or anything like that you'd associate athleticism with. You know, even compared to some of his WWE contemporaries, I guess he's more athletic than some of those big hulking guys that they get in WWE. But for the most part, even for like a smaller size guy, I never actually found him that. I mean, he did some flying elbows. He would do some fly through. Is it the second rope? No, I think he'd. Or the top rope, onto the ground. He'd do some high flight there. But, like, I wouldn't really call him, like, he's not really what I define as a high flyer, per se, in pro wrestling. I don't recall him doing too many athletic feats of strength or athletic feats in pro wrestling either. Where it's like, wow, that guy's like crazy, like Kofi Kingston. He's jumping from like the top turnbuckle to the table to the railing. That guy's just while running. It was never that guy. So even athleticism wise, I wouldn't actually put him as like I'd put him as a decent athlete at best. I never actually found him that athletic. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about CM Punk. Let's just get to the fights now. Robbie Lawler defeated Johnny Hendricks by split decision. Scorecards at 48-47 for Hendricks, and for Lawler there's a 49-46 and 48-47. I do not agree with the 49-46. I do see what it was. I think it was 1-2-4-5. That's how you get 49-46. Round 1, Lawler, sure. Round 5, Lawler, sure. Round 4, that one's a bit controversial because it was Hendricks getting a little more offense in, but then there was a last-minute flurry where Hendricks just kind of went underneath Lawler and just started getting beat down. And that was one of the most significant points of offense in the fourth round. So I'm actually in favor of 48-47 Lawler. I see a good argument for rounds 1, 4, and 5 for him. But it's based upon that like last minute flurry from Lawler in the fourth round where Hendricks was just underneath, unsuccessfully getting the takedown, just kind of like going turtle and just getting beat on. Hendricks said that his body pretty much shut down on him in rounds 4 and 5, and it showed. Which goes to actually my prediction video, because one thing I was saying about this fight is he was coming off bicep surgery, but he's also known to balloon up in weight. And this fight was originally supposed to be Chris Weidman, Vitor Belfort, and then Hendricks versus Lawler took over. But from what I read, Hendricks was really around like the 200s when the fight was announced. So I was like, oh, this guy's going to have to cut a lot of weight coming into this fight. Round 2. So round 2, pretty much what it was in round 2 was probably Lawler getting some of the better hits, the more aesthetically pleasing looking strikes on Hendricks. Honestly, he hit a front kick to Johnny Hendricks and it snapped his head back. He got kind of those type of strikes where it's kind of like, oh, those are some pretty strong strikes. It snapped Johnny Hendricks back. That wasn't the only strike in the second round that really hit him. I think he got a good. I think Hendricks also took this really almost flush head kick as well. That is why I can see how someone gave him Robbie Lawler second round, that he did the quote-unquote more damaging strike. I don't agree with that per se. I'd give Hendricks a second round. I guess the most contentious, or the closest round would probably be the fourth, because it's Hendricks getting the better of the offense for the first 4 minutes or so, and then Lawler getting this big flurry at the end that looked a lot more damaging than maybe it really was. I don't know. Getting more specific to the fight, though, man, was Robbie Lawler just sleeping for a lot of the fight, though, man? Except for the very beginning of the first round and the end of the fifth round and the end of that fourth round. I mean, man, in the third round, that guy was just like standing in front of Hendricks and doing nothing. And that was a good amount of the fourth round as well, And I'm just, me and my friends are just, come on, Lawler, what are you doing, He does tend to get complacent. It's one of his biggest problems. He kind of gets lazy with his offense. Sometimes Lawler will be really offense-minded, or else he'll be overly defensive-minded, where it's just the only thing he does is defend. When he counters, though, defends and counters, it's beautiful. But sometimes he gets lazy about doing that. That's the problem. One thing I noticed about this fight, though, is with Hendricks, is that he kind of opted a lot for control against the cage in this fight. He didn't actually do much when he got Lawler against the cage a lot of times. And when he did get the takedown, he really didn't do a lot. I have to say, just on top, there wasn't a lot of ground and pound or anything like that. A lot of times he'd get that half takedown thing where he gets him to his butt, but Lawler's back is still against the cage, It's that halfway takedown thing. I did like Johnny Hendricks' combinations, He has a really big problem, though, of dropping his right hand. That guy is so weak to his right side. I couldn't believe, that's the thing with Lawler. He was getting, I think they're both southpaw, right? Yeah, I think they're both southpaw, if I'm not mistaken. And, I'm not mistaken. I think they're both southpaw. I think there was at least 2 flush head kicks that Lawler managed to hit on Hendricks' right side. And then he also was getting straight lefts on his right side. Hendricks just has a really bad problem with that side. He's just... he keeps that hand down, and he just doesn't defend that side of his face very well. It's just... And it's something noticeable in a couple of his fights. Not just this fight, but in a couple of his fights, he's just not good at defending that side. Robbie Lawler, I think he's, 32, 33, maybe 31. I think he's 32. I think he's more 32. Talk about a resurgence, man. This guy lost to, in Strikeforce, would lose, Bobble Lou, Tim Kennedy, Laurent Larkin, and Strikeforce. Comes to the UFC back in welterweight, blows the doors off Josh Koscheck, and just was just coming up. And all of a sudden it's man, who is this guy? A lot of people were saying that. I know Jordan Reed always mentions this on the SRN. It's he's training in the desert, and there's something about the humidity that really. Lawler has some weird asthma problem or something, so he needed to go somewhere with different humidity, like Florida. So when we went to Florida and trained under ATT, all of a sudden he's really good. So, some were saying, that really helped his resurgence as well. Johnny Hendricks, I say this all the time and I'll say it again. When this guy goes to decision, the fight's always close. It's just... And once again, this is the same thing. even fights where he got like unanimous decisions, like against Carlos Condit. People were saying, "Oh man, Carlos Condit should have won because he's doing more from the bottom against Hendricks, and Hendricks got a lot of takedowns. And he didn't do much on top." And Mike Pierce, Josh Koscheck. I mean, those are really close fights. The GSP fight was relatively close. I gave that to Hendricks personally. I mean, I thought Hendricks should have got the win. I picked GSP to win that, and he ended up winning. But it was still a close fight. I mean, once again, it went down to just one round. It was just, okay, hey, what did you think of that first round? The first Robbie Lawler fight came down to the 5th round. This fight, I would say, probably came down also pretty much to the 5th round. But I mean, the most contentious round, the most controversial round would probably be the 4th. It just depends on what do you think was more in the judges' scorecards in that 4th round. But yeah, that's the thing. If Johnny Hendricks doesn't knock you out in like the 1st or 2nd round, and he goes to decision, you can almost like guarantee it'll be a relatively close decision. It can be unanimous for Johnny Hendricks, but still be a very close and somewhat controversial fight, as shown in the Carlos Condit fight. Even the Rick Story fight was, you kind of have to give it to Story just for like pinning Hendricks up against the cage for like long periods of time and stuff, getting body punches as well. But once again, that's just the thing with Johnny Hendricks. He has a way. He's either finishing like Martin Kampman, John Fitch, and whatnot, or else close decision. So that's always something you have to consider with Johnny Hendricks. I have been very, like I said, for some weird reason, I have to brag here, I have been very successful in picking Johnny Hendricks' fights for a pretty long time now, which is like kind of crazy. Like, I don't know why. I'm terrible with like Ricardo Lamas fights, Marcin Howell fights, getting better about Cub Swanson fights. But for some reason, I can pick Johnny Hendricks fights pretty well, and I don't understand it actually. Even this fight, I picked him to lose, and he did, which pretty crazy. Still keeping my Johnny Hendricks streak up for some reason. So with that said, Robbie Lawler, they could go with the trilogy fight with Johnny Hendricks. The number one contender right now is Rory McDonald, which would actually be just another rematch. But McDonald beat like Tyron Woodley and Tara Safdie in between that time. So, it's right. Is it in between? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was in between that time. So, and Damon Maya too. Yeah, Damon Maya. So, Roy McDonald deserves it. I'd lean a little more towards Roy McDonald in a 5-round fight to beat Lawler, personally. But that should be a good fight. And once again, they can go with the trilogy fight with Hendricks and Lawler. As far if they don't go with the trilogy fight with Hendricks, he can get the winner of Woodley versus Gastelum or the winner of Lombard versus Berkman next. Next fight after that, Anthony Showtime Pettis defeated Gilbert Melendez by submission, mounted guillotine in the 2nd round. One thing I gotta say about Pettis now is that he definitely is, besides being like defensively sound, having really strong, accurate, strong stand up, just being really accurate with the stand up, is that another thing I gotta put as far as a positive with him that I have greatly overlooked is him being an opportunist. Other guys that like really prove me wrong because they're like great opportunities for like Ricardo Lamas. Just a guy that can find that small opening to finish the fight. That's what Pettis does, and he does it really well. Benson Henderson, body kicks, he gets taken down, opportunity to armbar. Armbar the guy that's... And it's pretty incredible because he's doing things to guys that no one else has been able to do at pretty much the deepest weight division out there. People don't submit Benson Henderson. He gets out of really like tight submissions a lot. Watch like the first Cerrone fight, the Henderson Cerrone fight, for example. He beat Donald Cerrone with a body kick. Cerrone is known to be weak for the body, but he's a pretty durable guy. He's got a good chin, so for him to beat him in the first round like that, it's pretty incredible. And Melendez has never been finished. He's never been subbed. He also trains with a guy in Jake Shields that has a very good guillotine choke. So, it's not like Melendez doesn't know guillotine chokes. And for him to lose by guillotine choke by Anthony Pettis says a lot about Pettis, That's the thing. So, outside of just being like strong offense and striking, strong defense. He was getting hit, but I never got the impression that he was getting like really flush hit by Melendez. And then he was hitting back, and actually that was what caused like Melendez to go for the sloppy shot and for Pettis to take that guillotine choke. But yeah, I had to give it to Pettis. I picked him to win. I didn't think he'd win this way. For being opportunistic as well. And that's something you got to look out for moving forward. Because, you're probably going to fight a guy like Rafael Dos Anjos. A lot of guys are probably going to replicate what Gilbert Melendez was doing. So let's get to the fight now. I did like Melendez's strategy. High pressure. Don't give Pettis room to kick. Watch for the head kicks and whatnot. But yeah, and pin him up against the cage. That's and it could have worked. A lot of people do that to Pettis to some degrees of success. Even Benson Henderson in their second fight, he just kind of went forward, pushed him up against the cage, kind of grinded on him, couldn't complete the takedown. But it's like, hey, he's not kicking him. Melendez even managed to get Pettis down to the ground. Couldn't do anything with it, though. Pettis just got back to his feet when he got taken down. That's the thing. And even for the second round, until the ending sequence, it wasn't the worst strategy. Clay Guida pretty much did that strategy. And it worked during that time. If they fought again, I think Pettis wrecks Guida. I say this because there's one fighter out there that will probably replicate this strategy, and I'm very curious to see how well he'll be able to implement it, and that's Khabib Nurmagomedov. Those two, Pettis and Nurmagomedov, are pretty much on that collision course right now. In my opinion. The guy's undefeated. Nurmagomedov. He has a very strong win against Dos Anjos. Look what he did. Pinned him up against the cage. Took him down. Grinded on him. Just a real physical guy. If he got back up, take him down again. Stayed on top. Hit some ground and pound. Got to win 3-round domination over a very high-level guy in Dos Anjos. Right? That's pretty much what Melendez did, at least in the first round and against Pettis, but not to that much success. He didn't just dominate the round. He won the round, but it was like he's winning on points pretty much, And I think Nurmagomedov, when he fights Pettis, because I think it's almost inevitable, and just stylistically, I'm very curious to see where Melendez couldn't complete a takedown against the cage if Nurmagomedov could. And I think he could, to be perfectly honest with you. That's why it's such an appealing fight, because it's like that stylistic thing with Nurmagomedov. Striking wise, it's Pettis, but once again, he still needs range. He still needs to settle. And that's the thing. And fighters have been able to get Pettis up against a cage. However, now there's this new thing I have to think about with Pettis. How opportunistic he is. Because what if Nurmagomedov lets go of the gas and just starts getting hit to the body, like kicked to the body a bunch of times. And then it's like, shoot, well, geez, all that work of getting Pettis up against the cage, taking him down, maybe beating him up a little, amounts to nothing because Pettis can find that small window of opportunity to get to win. You know what I mean? For example, any number of scenarios can happen. I'm just saying that Pettis is just the type of guy that's very opportunistic. He can find those little openings, that small window of opportunity to get the win here. And that's kind of what he's shown so far in his career. It's generally pretty spectacular as well. So I wanted to bring that fight up because, I just think that Pettis is going to fight Nurmagomedov eventually. He'll fight Dos Anjos. Honestly, I think Pettis will probably get the winner of Nate Diaz versus Dos Anjos because that's a fight that's going to happen next week. Maybe the winner of Jury versus Cerrone because Cerrone's on a roll, He's not going to fight Nurmagomedov anytime soon because Nurmagomedov's coming back around March or April, I think. So I don't think they're going to give him, but you never know. Actually, it's December, January, February, March. Maybe Nurmagomedov next. As far as Melendez, the fight I want to see Melendez, and it makes sense right now, would be Eddie Alvarez. Both are coming off of high-profile losses. Both of them made their most success outside of their UFC. So that'd be a really good fight. If Rafael Dos Anjos loses to Nate Diaz, I'd like to see Dos Anjos versus Melendez. Or Melendez can get the loser of Cerrone versus Jury. Next fight after that, Travis Brown defeated Brendan Schaub by TKO in the first round. This fight's interesting just because there was some backstory here. Apparently, Brendan Schaub was going out with Ronda Rousey. I don't think they're going out anymore. And now Travis Brown is training at the same place that Ronda Rousey's training at, under Tarverdian. I've actually been pretty critical of Edmund Tarverdian as far as coaching MMA fighters. I think in boxing, this is probably the one fight that kind of helped Tarverdian's case because I'm really on the fence if he's that good of a trainer like boxing for MMA. Because Brown did hit that really nice uppercut, and he credited Tarverdian for that. One thing I'm liking about Brown, though, is his top control, though, man. When he got Big Brown, Brendan Schaub to the ground and mounted him, took his back. He's just so heavy on top, man. He's a big guy as it is, and then when he's on top of Schaub, it was just dude, Schaub gonna do anything. And once the TKO was called, they were trash talking each other in some way. I don't know how, but yeah. Schaub also just had such a hard time reaching Travis Brown. I think that his best weapon he had against him probably was an overhand right. But otherwise, he just could not reach his chin. Maybe if you're against taller guys, I'd like to go attack the body or the legs, because those are closer than a guy's face. That's generally what I go for when I spar like taller guys. I do a lot actually. So, it may have been better for Schaub not to aim so much at the face, but even then, I mean, he took an uppercut, went down, Brown got on top, started ground and pounding him, got to dominant position, pounded him out some more, got to TKO win. I mean, as far as Schaub's prospects in the division, I mean, the guy's chin isn't very good. He has a very terrible habit of lunging a lot, and that cost him. He got uppercutted because of that. He's a good wrestler, a good enough wrestler. Actually managed to get Charles Brown down, and that's actually a pretty good feat. As many, honestly, could not take Charles Brown down, so that's a pretty good feat. And he's not too bad on the ground when he's on top. He's a good front choke as well. Brendan Schaub does. Charles Brown is just a better overall fighter. He's a good takedown defense. He's hard to hold down when he is on his back. He had the better stand-up. And honestly had the better top control too. So, Brown, he gets right back on track. Maybe even get the winner of Dos Santos versus Miocic. Winner of Bigfoot versus Mir. Or like Andrei Arlovsky would work as well. With Schaub, wouldn't it actually be the worst thing to give him Mark Hunt, who's coming off the loss to Verdum? If not him, the loser Miocic versus Dos Santos. The loser Mir versus Bigfoot. I've wanted to see Schaub versus Mir. I know they've talked about it for a while. Or the loser Struve versus Overeem. Those are all good fitting fights for him as well. Next fight after that, Todd Duffy defeated Anthony Hamilton by knockout 33 seconds in the first round. Duffy's still a pretty bright heavyweight prospect. I mean, this guy is like, his boxing's solid, especially for the division. He hits hard. He looks really fit these days too. He came in at like 232 pounds or something like that. But one thing about Duffy that really helps, he's only 29, and in heavyweight, that's not too bad. He doesn't have a lot of fights. He's got knocked out twice, which isn't the greatest look. But he's taking time off, so that can actually help him. And like a lot of time off, 2 years off, that could actually help him. And one thing that Duffy has going for him in spades is athleticism. The guy is just such a physical, natural athlete. And I can see him go pretty far in heavyweight. I really can. And if he gets more performances like this against Hamilton, it made Hamilton just punched him, spun around, and belly flop. Yeah, Anthony Hamilton's not that great or anything like that, but heck, looking impressive, still looking impressive, he's just a good fighter. That's the thing with Duffy. I think Duffy should get the winner of Gonzaga versus Mitrione, or the winner of Overeem versus Struve next. Be interesting, Duffy Overeem, if they fight again, how that would turn out, actually. I would actually kind of lean a little more towards Duffy, as Overeem seems to be more declining, and he doesn't have the TRT either. I know Duffy was on TRT for one fight, and then he just got off it. And but he still looks great right now. Like I said, he's not like a 230 heavyweight, and actually being in the 230, 240 range has actually been one of the most beneficial weights to be in heavyweight, as shown with guys like Arlovsky early on. I think was around there. But Cain Velasquez is like a 230, 240 heavyweight. Same with Junior Dos Santos. Verdum, when he came into his fight against Hunt, was only 230 or something like that, maybe even less. So I think not being 250 or like 260 has actually shown to be the more beneficial size, to be more towards 230, 240. No more than 245 has actually been what a good amount of champions, except for like Brock Lesnar, Tim Sylvia, of course. But being a bit more of a lighter heavyweight has actually shown to be probably a bit better than being more of the 260, a bit more lumbering type of heavyweight. So far, you know. Yeah, and with Anthony Hamilton, though, I mean, I don't consider much of him to be much of a prospect or anything. It's a little more lower to mid-tier guys at the division for him. Next fight, I thought Tony Ferguson defeated Abel Trujillo by rear naked choke in the second round. From Trujillo's reactions, he's a guy that is very, like, kind of, he has a bully mentality, you know? He's a guy that will dish it out, but he can't really take it. Because when he gets hit, you can definitely see just, he has a reaction that, like, he really, most guys don't like getting hit, but, like, Trujillo is one of those guys, like, when he gets hit, he starts to fall apart a little. And then his cardio isn't very good either. So, Ferguson managed to actually take advantage of that a lot. Just Trujillo, I think, is gonna, moving forward, is gonna be one of those, like, weathering the early storm type of fighters. I think moving forward, you have to consider Trujillo as a guy that's like a 1 round, maybe a 2 round fighter at best. But even then, I mean, he just looked. There was a part of the fight where he just stood in front of Ferguson, put his arms in front of him, and just blocked his punches, and just kind of sat there. The way he gave up the rear naked choke, dude, I mean, it was just kind of like he kind of easily gave it to him. With Ferguson, he should be getting some higher profile fights after this. One thing I don't like about Ferguson, though, is that he goes for these high-risk submissions. And I just, you know, it's like he'll end up on his back a lot of times when he doesn't need to be. His striking's good. His ground game's really good. His takedown defense isn't too bad. He did get taken down by Castillo, and I think Trujillo actually managed to take him down, but it's not too bad, nonetheless. But he should get step up in competition. Maybe he should get the winner of Gleison Tebow versus Norman Park. Gleison Tebow's actually, he's always been that gatekeeper to the top 10. I mean, he's just a guy of like, oh, you can beat Gleison Tebow? Oh, hey, Michael Johnson, he beat Gleison Tebow. Oh, you should get top 10 fights next. Jim Miller beat Gleison Tebow. Evan Dunham at one time did beat Gleison Tebow. It was a really close fight. But, and during that time, though, Evan Dunham was on the way up. So, obviously, you know, now he's a guy that's fighting for his job. But generally speaking, if you beat Tebow, you can generally move on to like the top 10. And most guys have. And some guys stayed in the top 10. Some guys have been kicked off of the top 10. But so I think the winner of Park versus Tebow will work. Or maybe the winner of Al Iaquinta versus Joe Lozon. That'd be a good fight for Ferguson next. Another one I'd like to see, though, because there's like these up and coming prospects in lightweight. Tony Ferguson, Jorge Masvidal. Like Barboza and the Green and Jury have already broken into the top 10. But there are guys like Masvidal and Ferguson that are like following them, you know. I'd like to see Ferguson versus Jorge Masvidal next as well. But Trujillo, I mean, I guess maybe the loser of Park versus Tebow or the loser of Iaquinta versus Lozon would work. Yeah, I mean, also some like mid-level guys, really. would work for Abel Trio. Okay, on to the FS1 prelims. Uriah Faber defeated Francisco Rivera by a bulldog choke in the second round. There's 2 bulldog chokes on this card, and they're both on the prelims. What can you say here, though? I mean, that eye poke was the difference maker in the fight. I mean, which is really sad because no one expected Francisco Rivera to do well in this fight. I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, he's going to get taken down and probably ground and pounded or submitted. That's the thing, right? But no, Francisco Rivera decided to fight at range, pick his shots carefully, keep his back away from the cage, and pretty much just make it really hard for Uriah Faber. I mean, I was really surprised about what I was seeing from Rivera here. He kept it at a range where, like, Faber, if he did shoot in, he'd have to shoot from far away. He didn't kick. Well, no, he did kick. He kicked somewhere in the middle of the fight, but he mainly stuck with punching. More long punches than short punches. He avoided the cage, and it was and showed some good takedown defense. Faber would have to shoot far when he did shoot in, and he couldn't really get his hands on Rivera. I thought Rivera was actually on his way to winning the fight, to be perfectly honest with you. If it just kept going the way the fight did. Obviously, Faber's a guy that also is pretty opportunistic. If he finds a neck, in a scramble or something, it's done, So, yeah, this was a pretty unfortunate ending to this fight. As, like I said, Rivera's winning. With that said, I don't think any of these two get really knocked down or move up in the rankings or anything like that. So Faber can get like Dominic Cruz next. Win or lose against Dillashaw. I think Faber Cruz would be really good. I don't think he's willing to fight Dillashaw, but I'm not too sure. There aren't too many other bantamweights that I can think of that Faber can fight, to be perfectly honest with you. I say that a lot. But, because he's beaten pretty much every bantamweight, or lost to, he's lost Renan Barão, he's beat Michael McDonald, he beat Mizugaki, he beat Yuri Alcantara, when Pickett was at 135, he beat Pickett, he beat Jordan, Jeez, who else is up there? So maybe get a play from Marlon Moraes or, guys like Eduardo Dantas or something like that. Well, actually, he's stuck to Bellator. Or like Bibiano Fernandez or something like that. Because, with Faber, I don't know who else he can fight. Because now he's just in that, I'll fight dangerous up-and-comers. So it's like next guy he's going to fight that he hasn't already fought would be like Aljamain Sterling. Because, he already beat Bruce Leroy. Or maybe Kanehara, because Kanehara beat Bruce Leroy. So that'd be a good fight for Faber next as well. With Rivera, actually a fight with Bruce Leroy wouldn't be too bad. Maybe like a Russell Doan or something like that. You can fight a guy like that as well. Mid-level guys, if you want to give them some higher up there. Faber also beat, who is that one guy? He has a lot of brothers. There's one Brazilian fighter. His name, Rafael Sanchal. Faber's beaten Sanchal already, yeah. But you can also go with, maybe Caraway. I think Caraway, he's coming off a loss, so Caraway, Rivera would work as well. And I think Caraway has trained or does train at Team Alpha Male right now. So, probably Faber Caraway is probably not going to happen. Next right after that, Josh Salmon defeated Eddie Gordon by head kick in the second round. That was a KO of the year contender, and Eddie Gordon did not wake up right away. It was actually pretty scary how hard that was, chin to chin. But up until that point, I have to say Josh Salmon. I always say some man. I'm gonna say some man. Josh Salmon honestly looked really sloppy. He was throwing those single strike body kicks to Gordon, and Gordon would just catch him and counter. He'd get taken down a lot of times. The problem with Gordon though was once he got him to the ground, he didn't do much with it. I mean, Matt Serra would yell for the elbows and whatnot, and Eddie Gordon was just kind of just sitting in his guard. But yeah, no, Gordon, he had his hands down, and then he just got head kicked. It's a nice feel-good story for Salmon too, because he did have some personal tragedy that happened to him, and then he was out due to injury. So he's actually one of the better prospects at middleweight, to be honest with you. He has good athleticism, wrestling base. He just needs to fight less sloppy, a lot less single strikes, especially single body kicks. And he got taken down because he was just so over aggressive. But if he can clean up a lot of that, he can turn out to be pretty good. He's still a good prospect. Eddie Gordon's not the worst. I think Eddie Gordon though is more. He's 30 or 31. He's not a bad prospect himself. Trains with one of the best camps out there. But yeah, this is definitely a fight that I guess he can learn from. I guess if one of the biggest problems is with Gordon's strategy is that he elected for a lot of top control, and if you're fighting in that manner, you're giving your opponent 15 minutes to be able to finish you. If you're not looking for the finish, you're giving an opportunity for your opponent to finish you. That's the thing. So hopefully he kind of learns from this. He's still a prospect himself. I think he's a bit older, but I think he still can improve. Great one for Salmon. This is more lower to mid-tier guys of the division. I think he should get kind of higher up there. I think he was supposed to fight Kyle Magalhaes. And Kyle Magalhaes actually is not a bad prospect himself. Kind of a dark horse prospect of the division. A good mid-level gatekeeper type has always been Ed Herman. I think he's fighting Derek Brunson. So, yeah. The winner of Brunson versus Herman would be a good next fight for Salmon. Maybe the loser of that fight can get Eddie Gordon. Next fight after that, Corey Anderson defeated Justin Jones by unanimous decision. It's kind of a grinding fight. I mean, this fight, more than anything, just kind of showed that Corey Anderson needs a lot of work. But he did show improvement. He showed a very patient striking style. Was good about getting takedowns. I mean, he has a wrestling background. He was a wrestling coach. He used his wrestling well, grinded up against the cage. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing, but it was a good fight for him. I think he's 3-0, 4-0 coming into here. To give him cage time. He needs cage time. I think he hooked up with Ricardo Almeida's gym. It has Edson Barboza, Juan Moraes, and Frankie Edgar. So, a change in camp is really helpful for Corey Anderson. I wasn't terribly impressed with this fight, though. It wasn't that fun to watch or anything like that. But, Corey Anderson, I think he's a natural athlete. He's still mid-20s, I think. Maybe late 20s. And there aren't many 20-year-olds in light heavyweight. So, he's actually one of the better prospects of the division. Justin Jones, he's actually a pretty good athlete himself, but he wings punches. He puts a lot into his strikes. He has some pretty good knees. Got a good left hook. Defended takedowns as best as he can. He's actually pretty athletic. I'd like to see what he can do at middleweight. But yeah, otherwise, this fight wasn't that great. I was actually hoping that Corey Anderson would get a finish, because you are fighting a middleweight, and a guy that fights at middleweight on short notice. And, Anderson also proved to be the much superior grappler in this case. It went to show, it was a good performance from Anderson, but it really went to show that he's still a developing prospect. Next fight after that, Raquel Pennington defeated Ashley Evans-Smith by bulldog choke in the first round. The visual for that, when they slow-moed it, and Evans-Smith's face hitting the ground, it was actually pretty crazy. Evans-Smith was doing really well, though. Pinned Pennington against Gage, even got a takedown, got some top control. That's her game. She was actually doing pretty well. She just made that really big error, in transition. She actually got taken down herself, went back to her feet, but kind of gave up her back in the process of doing that, and exposed her neck. And Evans-Smith, or Pennington, went for, at first, what was like a rear naked choke with no hooks in, and just kind of bullied her down into a bulldog choke. So Pennington needed that win. She's actually kind of lucky here, because she was actually supposed to fight Holly Holm, and I think Holly Holm would just beat her up on the feet. So good one for Pennington, because Evans-Smith was, in my opinion, and Evans-Smith was taking the fight on short notice, a more favorable matchup for Pennington. With Pennington, she can get like a Milana Dudova, maybe go with the Holly Holm fight next. Does make sense. The Evans-Smith, just any lower to mid-tier bantamweights. She's one of the, in women's MMA, just in general, there aren't too many female fighters with like wrestling backgrounds. I can only count probably like 10, and that's across the board. That's across all divisions. I can probably only count maybe 10 that have like, not a grappling background. I don't mean like judo or like a jiu-jitsu background. I mean like a wrestling background. And Evans-Smith is like one of like a very few. Let me name some. There's like Carla Esparza, Sarah McMahon, of course. You can say Ronda Rousey, but that's like the judo background. But okay, let's even count her. I think Kent Zagana has that wrestling background. Misha Tate. Randa Marcos. There we go. Named 7. You see what I mean? I'm now struggling to find who in women's mixed martial arts has a wrestling background after like 7. Like a pure wrestling background, and I had to mention Ronda Rousey, because she just has such a strong grappling background that I kind of put her in that list. But the point I'm trying to make is that Evans-Smith is still in her 20s. This was only her 4th pro MMA fight. She's one of few female fighters with a wrestling background. She's one of the better prospects at 135 pounds. I can see her moving up the ranks, improving and moving up the ranks despite this loss. And, she was doing pretty well. That's the thing. She took the fight on short notice, but she's doing pretty well, With Pennington, Pennington's a weird, Pennington, I think her ceiling's kind of set. She's only in her mid-30s, or 20s. She's like, 5-5 now? She's still a prospect, but You know, I really think that her ceiling's kind of set as kind of like a mid-level gatekeeper type. Because she just seems like that. She's just coming across like that tough out. You know, her striking's good. She's kind of low volume, low power, though. What is it, low volume? But I know it's like... Yeah, I would say like low volume, low power. No, she has good takedown defense, and she's tough as nails. You know, that's pretty much being tough as nails is like a prerequisite for being like a gatekeeper. Yeah, I kind of think that's where Pennington's headed to. She can get wins in the UFC and stay in the UFC, but she'll also lose in the UFC as well. Evan Smith, I hope she can get away from being... She's kind of a pure wrestler in MMA right now, though. So, I don't know if she's going to get out of that mold herself. Hopefully she can. Because I think there's some upside to her as well. Okay, on the Fight Pass prelims, Sergio Pettis defeated Matt Hobart by unanimous decision. I don't know how he got a 30-27 when he got dropped in the first round, and I thought Hobart totally took that first round. That Pettis looked good, but not great. He has been, quite honestly, a bit underwhelming in the UFC so far. I think one thing that hurts him is he fights at bantamweight, and I think the size thing is really starting to show pretty early on how much of a disadvantage it is for Sergio Pettis. He has talked about going back to flyweight, and I think that's just a more suitable weight class for his size. But otherwise, it's kind of like what I expected out of this fight, except for that early scare in the first round. I mean, it's just Sergio Pettis being the spear striker, strikes in combination well, and he defended Matt Hobart's grappling. Takedown attempts, when it did get to the ground, I mean, Hobart seemed a bit superior in the grappling. Part of its size, too. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's like 5'6" to like 5'10", and you know, it just this fight more or less just showed me that Sergio Pettis should fight in flyweight more than anything else. He's a good fighter. He's a good prospect. He's been, considering the hype that's been around him now, he's been a bit underwhelming in the UFC so far, in my personal opinion. I think he fought like Yeltsin Mazan last time out or something like that. It wasn't that great of a fight, to be honest with you. Yeah, and for both of them, just more lower to mid-tier guys of the division. And finally, Clay Collard defeated Alex White by unanimous decision. I mean, this fight was fun, but I think what a lot of people were saying about this fight was just kind of how regional level it looked. I mean, there's like kind of a low level of skill implemented by both guys. Both of them have very high offense, but very terrible defense. I mean, chins high, getting hit clean and whatnot. Collard was definitely better on the ground than White. Got a really nice triangle choke. Surprised White didn't tap out to it. White managed to rally back in the third, but it wasn't enough. Yeah, it's tough to see both of these guys as prospects in the division because they're both, on a technical level, they just aren't there yet. You know what I mean? They're both tough guys, though. Collard especially. But I don't know how far their toughness will take them. Because their skill doesn't necessarily match their toughness at this point. Both these guys should just get more lower to mid-tier guys of the division. So that's it for my post-fight analysis for UFC 181. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.